In a shallow rock shelter in northern Australia, buried under layers of sand and time, archaeologists found something that rewrites a key chapter in the story of human history. They unearthed tens of thousands of stone artifacts, vibrant pigments, and some of the world's oldest known ground-edge axes. But the most profound discovery wasn't an object at all. It was a date. Advanced dating techniques suggest that humans were living in this very spot, called Madjedbebe, as far back as 65,000 years ago. Let that sink in. 65,000 years ago. That's tens of thousands of years before people painted the famous caves at Lascaux. It's an almost unimaginable stretch of time. But the age of the site isn't even the most shocking part of the story. The truly astounding part is where it is. To get to Australia, these ancient people had to do something that many didn't think was possible for another 50,000 years. They had to become ocean explorers. This isn't just speculation. It's a journey written in the archaeological and genetic record. But it leaves us with an incredible question. How did our ancient ancestors, long before the age of sail, long before compasses, launch one of the world's first great voyages into the unknown? To really get the scale of this achievement, we need to look at a map of the world as it was back then. Around 65,000 years ago, during a period of the Ice Age, so much water was locked up in massive glaciers that sea levels were dramatically lower. What is today a chain of islands in Southeast Asia was a single, vast landmass called Sunda. To the southeast lay another giant continent, Sahul, the combined land of Australia, New Guinea, and Tasmania. But between Sunda and Sahul, there was a catch. A series of deep oceanic trenches, an area known today as Wallacea, meant that even at the lowest sea levels, there was always open water. This is a famous biological boundary called the Wallace Line. It marks the stark difference between Asian and Australian animal life, and explains why creatures like tigers and monkeys never made it to Australia on their own. If they couldn't cross on foot, neither could people. They needed another way. Any journey from Sunda to Sahul required multiple sea crossings. And while the exact routes are still debated, at least one of those crossings was likely a journey of around 90 to 100 kilometers. A stretch of ocean so wide you couldn't see your destination from where you started. You would have had to push off from shore, leaving everything you knew behind, and paddle toward an empty horizon, armed with little more than faith that something was out there. For decades, the general consensus was that humans arrived in Australia around 45,000 to 50,000 years ago. But the discoveries at the Madjedbebe rock shelter, led by archaeologist Clarkson in collaboration with the local Mirarr Aboriginal people, presented a radical new timeline. Using a technique called optically stimulated luminescence, or OSL, scientists were able to date the individual grains of sand in which the artifacts were buried. Basically, OSL measures the last time the sand was exposed to sunlight, which tells you when it was laid down, burying the tools with it. The result pointed to an age of around 65,000 years. Now, in science, an extraordinary claim requires extraordinary evidence, and the Madjedbebe date is still debated. Some researchers question whether the artifacts might have shifted into older layers of sediment, a valid concern in sandy, termite-active environments. Other archaeological and genetic studies present a range of dates, but most syntheses now place the arrival of people in Sahul broadly between 50,000 and 65,000 years ago. This disagreement isn't a failure of science. It is science. It's how we get closer to the truth. But whether the final number is 50,000 or 65,000, the core puzzle remains. People made it to a new continent that was only accessible by sea, long before anyone thought possible. The question is, how? The first thing to accept is that we'll almost certainly never find the boats these people used. The materials they had on hand, bamboo, reeds, and vines, simply don't survive for tens of thousands of years. The boats are ghosts, known only by the fact that they must have existed. So, were these voyages an accident? For a long time, some theories suggested just that. A small group of foragers swept out to sea by a storm, drifting helplessly until they washed ashore on a new continent. It's a compelling image, but a growing body of evidence suggests it's probably wrong. Recent modeling studies have shown that the odds of a purely accidental drift voyage successfully colonizing Sahul are incredibly low. You don't just need one lucky raft to make it. You need enough people to arrive to establish a viable, lasting population. Some models suggest a founding group of over 1,000 individuals might have been necessary, arriving either in a large, organized migration or through a steady stream of smaller voyages over centuries. A single lost fishing party just wouldn't be enough. The evidence fits much better with planned, purposeful voyages. The likelihood that these were planned journeys makes the story even more profound. It points to a level of foresight, communication, and technology that many once thought was exclusive to much more recent history. Exploring these deep historical questions is what we do. If you find yourself wondering about the real story of our ancient past, you're in the right place. To say a voyage was planned doesn't mean they had maps and compasses. It means they had knowledge. Knowledge of currents and winds. Knowledge of how to build watercraft capable of surviving for days at sea. And just as important, knowledge of a world beyond the horizon. These weren't single, blind leaps. They were most likely the final steps in a long process of island hopping through Wallachia. Each island was a new world, but it was also a new vantage point to see the next island and the next. Perhaps they saw smoke from distant fires, or watched birds migrating to and from land they couldn't see. Over generations, they would have built up a mental map of their world. That final crossing, the one into the true unknown, would have been the ultimate test. It required not just technology, but immense social organization. You'd need to gather enough people, stock enough water and food, and share a collective belief in the goal. This was a group effort, demanding cooperation and trust on a scale that hints at a complex social world. And once they arrived, they didn't stop. From their initial landing point, likely on the now submerged coast of northwestern Australia or New Guinea, humans spread across the entire continent with remarkable speed. Some models suggest they followed coastal superhighways, while others point to a radiating wave of movement inland. Either way, it's estimated that within just a few thousand years, people had adapted to every environment Sahul had to offer, from tropical coasts to the harsh central desert. All of this evidence helps explain the how, but it leaves us with the biggest question of all: why? Why would anyone push a raft away from a perfectly good shore and paddle out into the open ocean? There probably wasn't just one reason. For some, it could have been population pressure or depleted resources, pushing them to find new territory. For others, it might have been social dynamics, groups splitting off to find their own space. But we shouldn't discount a motive that we still recognize in ourselves: curiosity, the simple, powerful, human desire to see what's over the horizon. These were not primitive people simply reacting to their environment. They were modern humans, just like us. They had language, art, and culture, and they may have had that same spark of exploration that has defined our species ever since. To stand on that ancient shore, to look out at the endless blue, and to make the decision to go. That is one of the most significant moments in human history. You could argue that the first peopling of Australia wasn't an accident, but humanity's first great act of planned exploration. It was a cognitive leap, a demonstration of the ability to plan, cooperate, innovate, and to imagine a world beyond the visible. It proves that 65,000 years ago, our ancestors were not just surviving, they were calculating explorers, pushing the known boundaries of their world. This journey redefined their world, and in telling its story, it should redefine our understanding of them. It is a powerful reminder that the desire to see what's next is not a modern invention. It is one of the most ancient and fundamental parts of who we are.